There are promises made under duress, agreements coerced through desperation, obligations enforced by authority when consent was never truly given, and transformations that happen not through love, but through violent rejection. This is a story about a princess forced into physical contact with a creature she found repulsive, about a father who valued his word more than his daughter's bodily autonomy, about promises extracted through desperation that should never have been enforced, about how we romanticize situations where women have no power to say no. This is not a story about looking past appearances to find true love. This is a story about consent violated, agency denied, and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes transformation happens not through acceptance, but through the freedom to reject. This is the true story of the Frog Prince as written by the brothers Grimm in 1812, before Disney turned forced physical contact into a romantic kiss and bodily autonomy violation into a love story. This is a story about what happens when your father forces you to share your bed with a creature that disgusts you, because he values his honor more than your right to say no. This is the horror of the Frog Prince. In a grand kingdom surrounded by deep forests, there lived a king with 3 daughters. The youngest princess was known throughout the land for her exceptional beauty. She had golden hair that shone like sunlight, eyes as blue as summer skies, and skin so fair that poets wrote verses comparing her to moonlight on snow. But beauty and kindness are not the same thing. The young princess was spoiled and vain, accustomed to having everything she wanted, unused to being denied anything. Her father, the king, indulged her completely, giving her jewels and dresses and whatever else caught her fancy. Her most prized possession was a golden ball, not a ball for dancing or formal occasions, but a toy, a perfect sphere of solid gold that she would play with for hours, tossing it in the air and catching it, watching it gleam in the sunlight. The palace had magnificent gardens that stretched far into the surrounding forest. Deep in these gardens stood an ancient linden tree, and beneath this tree was a well of cool, clear water. The well was deep and dark, its bottom invisible even on the brightest days. The princess loved to come to this spot on hot summer days. She would sit beneath a linden tree in the shade, playing with her golden ball, tossing it higher and higher, delighting in the flash of gold against the green leaves. One afternoon, as she played beneath the tree, she threw the ball particularly high. It rose into the air, spinning, catching the light, beautiful in its arc. But when it came down, her hands missed the catch. The golden ball struck the ground, bounced once, and rolled directly into the well. The princess rushed to the edge and looked down. The water was so deep and dark she couldn't see the bottom. Her precious golden ball was gone, vanished into the depths. She began to cry. Not quiet, dignified tears, but loud, dramatic sobbing. The kind of crying that came from never having lost anything before, never having been denied something she wanted. As she wept, she heard a voice. "Why are you crying, princess? Your tears could move even a stone to pity." She looked around and saw, sitting at the edge of the well, a frog, large and green and slimy, with bulging eyes and wet skin that glistened in the sunlight. "I'm crying for my golden ball," she said between sobs. "It fell into the well and now it's lost forever." "I can retrieve it for you," the frog said. "I can dive down and bring it back." The princess looked at the disgusting creature with sudden hope. "You can. Oh, please do." I'll give you anything, my jewels, my dresses, even my golden crown." "I don't want jewels or dresses or crowns," the frog said. "I want to be your companion. I want to sit beside you at your table, eat from your golden plate, drink from your golden cup, and sleep in your bed. If you promise me this, I'll bring back your ball." The princess's disgust was immediate and visceral. This slimy, ugly creature wanted to touch her things, eat her food, sleep in her bed. The very thought made her skin crawl. But she wanted her golden ball desperately. And surely a frog couldn't actually enforce such an absurd promise. Frogs belonged in ponds and wells, not in palaces. Once she had her ball back, she could simply refuse. Yes, I promise. Whatever you want, just bring back my ball." The frog dove into the well, down through the dark water, down to the depths where the golden ball had settled. He grasped it in his mouth and swam back up, emerging at the edge of the well with the ball gleaming wet but undamaged. He dropped it on the ground at the princess's feet. She snatched up her precious ball immediately, joy flooding through her. She had it back, her beautiful golden ball. She turned to leave. "Wait," the frog called after her. "Take me with you. I can't run as fast as you can." But the princess was already running back toward the palace, clutching her ball, not giving the frog another thought. He was just a disgusting creature from a well. The promise meant nothing. She'd gotten what she wanted, and that was all that mattered. The frog sat by the well, watching her disappear into the gardens, and began his slow journey toward the palace. That evening, the royal family gathered for dinner in the great hall. The king sat at the head of the table, his daughters arranged around him, nobles and courtiers filling the rest of the space. Servants brought course after course of elaborate food on golden plates. The young princess sat at her place, eating from her golden plate with her golden utensils, drinking from her golden cup, having already forgotten completely about the frog and her promise. Then she heard something on the marble stairs outside the great hall. A wet, slapping sound. The sound of something small and damp climbing step by step. The sound reached the door. Then came a knocking. "Youngest princess, open the door for me." The princess felt cold dread wash over her. She knew that voice, the frog. The disgusting creature from the well. He'd actually followed her to the palace. She said nothing, hoping he would go away. The knocking came again, louder. "Youngest princess, open the door. Remember your promise at the well by the linden tree." The king noticed his daughter's pale face. "What's wrong? Who's at the door?" "It's nothing, father. Just a disgusting frog." "A frog? What does a frog want with you?" Reluctantly, feeling trapped, the princess told her father the story. The golden ball falling into the well, her tears, the frog's offer, the promise she'd made, and you promised him he could be your companion, eat from your plate and sleep in your bed. I didn't mean it. I just wanted my ball back. He's a horrible, slimy creature. I can't possibly keep such a promise. The king's face grew stern. A promise is a promise, daughter, especially a promise made in exchange for service rendered. If this frog retrieved your ball, you owe him what you agreed to. Go, open the door. But father, open the door now. The princess had never heard such firmness in her father's voice. She rose from her seat, went to the door, and opened it. The frog sat on the threshold, wet and green and repulsive. "Thank you for opening the door. Now lift me up to your chair so I can sit beside you." The princess looked back at her father, pleading silently for him to release her from this obligation. But the king nodded. "You made a promise. Honor it." Fighting revulsion, the princess bent down and picked up the frog. His skin was cold and damp and slimy. She could feel him moving in her hands, could feel his wet body against her fingers. She wanted to drop him immediately, to throw him out the window, to run away screaming. But her father was watching. The entire court was watching, and she'd been raised to obey her father. Absolutely. She carried the frog to her chair and set him on the table beside her golden plate. "I'm hungry," the frog said. "Push your plate closer so I can eat." The princess looked at her father again. Surely this was too much. Surely he wouldn't make her share her food with this creature. But the king's expression was unyielding. "You promised." The princess pushed her golden plate toward the frog, her appetite completely gone. The frog hopped onto the edge of the plate and began eating. He ate messily, as frogs do, bits of food sticking to his mouth, his long tongue darting out to catch morsels. The princess watched in horror, her stomach turning. This creature was touching her food, eating from her plate. His wet, slimy body was contaminating everything. When he'd eaten his fill, the frog spoke again. "I'm thirsty now. Push your golden cup closer so I can drink." The princess did so, fighting the urge to vomit as the frog drank from her cup, his mouth touching the rim where her lips had been. The entire meal continued this way, the frog eating and drinking from her dishes while she sat frozen in disgust, unable to touch any food he'd contaminated, unable to leave because her father's eyes were on her, enforcing a promise she'd never truly meant to keep. Finally, the frog spoke again. "I'm tired now. Carry me to your room and prepare your bed so we can sleep." This was too much. The princess began to cry, real tears of distress this time, not the theatrical sobbing from the well. "Father, please, don't make me take him to my bed. Please, he's disgusting. I can't bear it." The king's voice was ice. "You made a promise, daughter. What kind of person would you be if you broke your word? What kind of princess? What kind of human being?" He was using shame as a weapon, making her feel guilty for wanting bodily autonomy, making her doubt her own right to say no. "A promise made must be a promise kept," the king continued. "Your word is your honor. Without honor, you are nothing. Take the frog to your bed as you promised." The princess looked around the great hall. All the nobles and courtiers were watching, some with sympathy, some with judgment, all witnessing her humiliation. She had no choice. Her father had given her a direct command in front of the entire court. To refuse would be public disobedience, would shame him and herself. So she picked up the frog again, feeling his cold, wet, slimy body in her hands, and carried him from the great hall. She climbed the stairs to her chambers, the frog weighing almost nothing but feeling like a crushing burden. Each step felt like a violation of her own will, her own autonomy, her own right to control who touched her and her things. She reached her bedchamber, beautiful and luxurious, with silk curtains and velvet cushions, and a magnificent bed draped in the finest linens. "Put me on your pillow," the frog said. The princess's hands shook as she placed the frog on her silk pillow, watching him leave wet marks on the fabric. "I'm so tired," the frog said. "Pull back the covers and let me into your bed." The princess wanted to scream, wanted to throw the frog out the window, wanted to run from the room and never come back. But her father had commanded her, had enforced a promise she'd made under duress, extracted through desperation, never truly intended. She pulled back the covers. The frog hopped down into her bed, his wet body touching her sheets, leaving damp spots on the silk. "Lie down beside me," the frog said. "You promised to let me sleep in your bed. That means sleeping beside me." The princess stood frozen, staring at her bed, at the creature waiting there, at the situation she'd been forced into. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. This was her bed, her private space, her body. She should have the right to say who or what was allowed in it. But her father's words echoed in her mind. "A promise made must be a promise kept. Without honor, you are nothing." So she climbed into bed, staying as far from the frog as possible, pressing herself against the very edge of the mattress. The frog hopped closer. "You promised to be my companion. Companions don't lie as far apart as possible." "This is close enough," the princess said, her voice shaking. "Move closer." "No. You promised. I don't care what I promised. You're a disgusting, slimy creature, and I hate you. I hate that you're in my bed. I hate that I was forced to let you eat from my plate and drink from my cup. I hate that my father made me do this. Against my will." All the rage and disgust and violation she'd been suppressing burst out. "I wish I'd never made that promise. I wish I'd let my stupid golden ball stay in the well. I wish you'd never followed me here. I wish." She grabbed the frog in fury and threw him with all her strength against the wall. The moment he struck the wall, something happened. There was a flash of light, a sound like bells ringing, a sensation of magic washing through the room. Where the frog had been, there was now a young man, handsome, richly dressed, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The princess stared in shock. "Thank you," the man said. "Thank you for breaking the spell." "What?" "I don't understand." "What spell? Who are you?" "I am Prince Heinrich from the neighboring kingdom. A wicked witch cursed me years ago, transforming me into a frog. The only way to break the spell was for a princess to take me into her home, let me eat from her plate, drink from her cup, and sleep in her bed. And then, when she could bear it no longer, when her true feelings emerged, the spell would break." "You mean you knew? You knew I was being forced? You knew I was disgusted?" "The spell required a promise. It required enforcement. It required you to do things against your will until you reached your breaking point and rejected me. That rejection, that honest expression of your true feelings, was what broke the curse." The princess felt sick. "So all of that, being forced to let you eat from my plate, forced to bring you to my bed, that was necessary for your spell?" "Yes." "The curse required that a princess make a promise, be forced to keep it, and then ultimately break it through honest rejection. Your father enforcing the promise was part of what needed to happen. My father knew no. He simply believed in keeping promises. But his enforcement of your word was what the spell needed. The princess sat on her bed, trembling. So I was used. My disgust, my violation, my lack of consent, all of that was necessary to break your curse. I'm sorry, truly sorry. But yes, the witch who cursed me was cruel. She designed the spell specifically to require violation of boundaries, forcing of unwanted contact. She knew it would cause suffering. And you let it happen. You made me promise. You followed me here knowing I would be forced. I've been a frog for 7 years. I was desperate. And I was desperate for my golden ball. So you exploited that desperation to extract a promise you knew would be enforced against my will. Prince Heinrich looked ashamed. When you put it that way, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to break the curse. The princess stood up. Get out of my room. But the spell is broken. We're meant to marry. That's how these stories end. The prince is freed from his curse and marries the princess. I don't care how the story is supposed to end. I didn't consent to any of this. My father forced me. You used me. The spell violated my autonomy. I want you out of my room. Now, please, just listen. Out. Prince Heinrich left, confusion and hurt on his face. He'd expected gratitude, expected romance, expected the princess to fall into his arms now that he was handsome and human. He hadn't expected her to be angry, to feel violated, to reject him even in his true form. The princess locked her door and collapsed on her bed, finally alone, finally safe from unwanted touch. But the violation didn't disappear just because the frog was gone. The feeling of being forced lingered. The memory of her father's command. The sensation of the frog's wet body. The disgust and rage and helplessness. She'd been used. By the frog who became a prince. By her father who valued promises over consent. By a curse that required her violation to break, and everyone would expect her to be happy about it. To be grateful, the frog was actually a handsome prince. To accept a marriage proposal as a reward for her suffering. The next morning, the king summoned his daughter to his chambers. I heard what happened last night. Prince Heinrich explained everything. The curse, the spell, the transformation. Did he explain how he used me, how you forced me to endure unwanted physical contact, how my consent never mattered? The king looked uncomfortable. He needed to break his curse. You made a promise. I enforced it. Everything was done properly and honorably. Everything was done against my will. You gave your word. Your word binds you. I gave my word under duress. I was desperate for my golden ball. He exploited that desperation. That's not true consent, Father. Nevertheless, you promised. And now Prince Heinrich wishes to marry you. It would be an excellent alliance between our kingdoms. The princess stared at her father in disbelief. You want me to marry him after what he did, after what you forced me to do? He's a prince, handsome, wealthy, from a good family. The curse wasn't his fault. He was simply trying to break it. By violating my boundaries, by using me without my consent. Don't be dramatic. You're making this into something it's not. You helped break a curse. Now you have an opportunity for a good marriage. Many young women would be thrilled. I'm not many young women, I'm your daughter, and I'm telling you I don't consent to this marriage. The king's expression hardened. You don't have to consent. I've already agreed to the betrothal on your behalf. You'll marry Prince Heinrich in 3 months. No, this isn't a request, daughter. This is a command. As your king and your father, I'm telling you that you will marry Prince Heinrich. The alliance benefits our kingdom. Your personal feelings are secondary to your duty. The princess felt the walls closing in again. Just like the night before, being forced into something against her will. But this time it wasn't a frog in her bed for one night. This was her entire future. You can't force me to marry him. I can, and I will. This is what daughters of kings do. We make alliances. We marry for political benefit. Your mother did it. Her mother before her. This is your duty. What if I refuse? What if I run away? Then you're no longer my daughter. You'll be exiled from the kingdom with nothing. No money, no title, no home. Is that what you want? The princess realized she was trapped. Just like with the frog, she had no real choice. Refuse and lose everything. Accept and lose her freedom. Either way, her autonomy meant nothing. I need time to think, she whispered. You have 3 months. The wedding is already being planned. The princess left her father's chambers and wandered the palace gardens in a daze. She found herself walking to the well beneath the linden tree, the place where this nightmare had begun. Prince Heinrich was there, sitting on the edge of the well, waiting for her. I thought you might come here, he said. This is where we first met. This is where you first manipulated me, the princess corrected. Where you exploited my desperation to extract a promise you knew would be enforced. I didn't know your father would force you. I hoped you'd keep your word willingly. Really, you honestly thought a day princess would willingly share her bed with a frog? You counted on the force, on the coercion. That's what the spell required. Heinrich looked away. I was desperate. 7 years as a frog. I would have done anything to break the curse, including violating my consent. I never touched you inappropriately. I never did anything beyond what you promised. You existed in my bed against my will. You touched my food, my dishes, my private space. You were there when I didn't want you there. That's violation enough. I'm sorry, truly sorry. I didn't fully understand how it would feel from your perspective. I was so focused on breaking my own curse that I didn't think about what I was forcing you to endure. The princess sat on the edge of the well, exhausted. And now you want to marry me. Your father says, my father says many things. What do you say? Knowing how I feel, knowing I don't consent, do you still want this marriage? Heinrich was quiet for a long moment. I thought I did. I thought once you saw I was a prince, once you knew the curse was broken, you'd be happy. That we could start fresh. Start fresh, pretend none of it happened, pretend you didn't use me. I'd hoped we could move past it. That's not how trauma works. You don't just move past violation. So what do you want? To refuse the marriage and be exiled? Your father said, I know what my father said. I'm trapped between forcing and exile. Neither option involves my actual consent. What if Heinrich hesitated. What if I convinced your father to release you from the betrothal? Would you stay in the kingdom then? The princess looked at him in surprise. You'd do that? Give up the marriage alliance? If it means you're free to choose? Yes. What? The curse required of you was already too much. I won't force you into more. Why the change? Why offer this now? Because you're right. About all of it. I used you. The spell required your violation. I went along with it because I was desperate. That doesn't make it right. Heinrich stood and looked toward the palace. I'll speak to your father. I'll tell him I'm withdrawing my proposal, that I don't wish to marry someone who doesn't want to marry me. He'll be furious. The alliance is less important than your right to choose your own future. I owe you this much at least. Heinrich left the garden, and the princess sat alone by the well, hardly daring to hope. An hour later, she was summoned back to her father's chambers. The king was indeed furious. Prince Heinrich has withdrawn his marriage proposal. Do you know how this makes us look? How insulting this is to our kingdom. He withdrew because I don't consent to the marriage, because I don't want to marry him. What you want is irrelevant. This was a good alliance. A beneficial arrangement. For the kingdom, perhaps, not for me. You're a princess. Your personal desires don't matter. You exist to serve the kingdom. Then I'll stop being a princess. The words came out before the princess had fully formed the thought. But once spoken, she knew they were true. What are you saying? I'm saying I renounce my title. I'll leave the kingdom. You can't force me to marry if I'm not a princess anymore. You're being absurd. Where would you go? What would you do? I don't know. But anywhere is better than here. Anything is better than being forced into another situation where my consent doesn't matter. The king's face turned red with rage. Fine. Leave. Renounce your title. But you leave with nothing. No money, no jewels, nothing but the clothes on your back. And you're never welcome back. Once you walk out those gates, you're no longer my daughter. I understand. Do you really understand what you're giving up? Wealth, comfort, security, position. All for what? Pride, stubbornness, autonomy, freedom, the right to make my own choices. That's worth more than all your wealth. The princess left her father's chambers, went to her room, and changed into simple traveling clothes. She left behind her jewels, her dresses, her golden ball, all the possessions that had once seemed so important. She walked out of the palace, through the gardens, past the well beneath the linden tree, through the gates, and into the forest beyond. She had no plan, no destination, no money, no skills. But she was free, free from forced promises, free from coercion, free from a father who valued honor over her consent. The forest was vast and dangerous. The princess walked for hours, then days, surviving on berries and stream water, sleeping under trees, learning to navigate by the stars. She encountered danger, wild animals, harsh weather, dangerous travelers. But she also encountered kindness, a farmer's wife who gave her bread and showed her which plants were edible, a village that let her work in exchange for food and shelter, a wise woman who taught her practical skills. Slowly, over months and years, the spoiled princess who had cried over a golden ball became a different person, stronger, more self-reliant, less concerned with beauty and status, more focused on survival and freedom. She never married, never wanted to after what she'd experienced, never wanted to put herself in a position where someone else had power over her body and choices. She lived alone in a small cottage at the head, forest's edge, growing her own food, making her own way, answering to no one. Some in the nearby village whispered that she was strange, a woman alone, no husband, no children, living independently. But others recognized her strength, came to her for advice, valued her wisdom earned through hardship. Years passed. The princess, though no one called her that anymore, grew older, her golden hair turning silver, her face gaining lines from sun and work. She never regretted leaving the palace, never missed the luxury or the title. Sometimes she thought about that night with the frog, about the violation of being forced into unwanted physical contact, about her father enforcing a promise that should never have been kept, about a curse that required her consent to be overridden. She thought about Prince Heinrich and wondered what had happened to him, if he'd married someone else, if he'd ever understood the full weight of what he'd done. She thought about the golden ball at the bottom of the well, still there perhaps, unretrieved and forgotten. But mostly she thought about freedom, about the choice she'd made to walk away from everything rather than submit to one more violation of her autonomy. That choice had cost her everything the world said mattered: wealth, status, comfort, security. But it had given her the one thing that mattered most: herself. One day, when she was much older, a young woman came to her cottage. The woman looked exhausted and frightened, her fine clothes torn and dirty. "I heard there's a woman here who might help me, a woman who understands what it means to run away." The old woman who had been a princess invited her in. "Tell me your story." The young woman's tale was familiar. A father trying to force her into a marriage she didn't want. A man she'd never loved. A future she hadn't chosen. "I don't know where to go or what to do," the young woman said. "But I couldn't stay. I couldn't let them force me." The old woman smiled. "You've already made the hardest choice, choosing yourself over what others demand. Everything else you can learn." She taught the young woman to forage and hunt, to build fires and find shelter, to survive independently, to trust her own judgment. "The world will tell you that you're wrong," the old woman said. "That you're selfish for wanting autonomy, that you should accept what's forced on you. Don't listen. Your consent matters. Your choices matter. Your freedom matters more than their comfort." The young woman stayed for several months, learning skills and gaining confidence. Then she moved on, traveling to a city where she could build her own life. The old woman watched her go and felt satisfied. She'd helped someone else escape, helped another woman claim her autonomy. This became her purpose in her later years, a sanctuary for those running from forced marriages, coercive situations, violations of consent. She never preached or evangelized, just offered shelter, taught skills, and sent people on their way to choose their own paths. When she died, many years later, she died alone in her cottage. Some would say she died lonely and unfulfilled, without family or legacy. But she died free, having chosen every day of her life from the moment she walked out of the palace gates. That freedom, that autonomy, that right to consent or refuse, that was worth more than any golden ball, any prince, any throne. The village buried her beneath a linden tree, like the one from the palace gardens where her transformation had begun. Not the transformation from frog to prince. That was Prince Heinrich's story. But her transformation from a spoiled princess who thought she could make promises without consequences to a woman who understood that consent matters more than honor, that autonomy matters more than duty, that freedom matters more than comfort. Her grave had no royal marker, no elaborate monument, just a simple stone that read, "She chose herself." And maybe that's the real ending. Not happily ever after. Not true love's triumph. Not the prince and princess united. Just a woman who refused to be forced. Who valued her own consent above everything else the world said mattered. Who built a life of freedom even though freedom meant giving up everything else. Some would call that a tragedy. But the old woman who had been a princess would have called it victory, because she lived and died on her own terms. And in the end, that was the only happy ending that mattered. Years after the old woman's death, travelers still spoke of her. The princess who gave up everything for freedom. The woman who helped others escape forced marriages and coercive situations. Her story became a different kind of fairy tale, not one about transformation through love, but about transformation through choice, through the radical act of choosing autonomy over everything else. Prince Heinrich had his own ending. He married eventually a woman who genuinely wanted to marry him. They had children and ruled their kingdom well. But he never forgot the princess who refused him, who taught him that wanting something didn't entitle him to have it, that his desperation didn't justify violating someone's consent. In his later years, he made it law in his kingdom that no person could be forced into marriage, that consent must be freely given, not coerced. Some said he did it from guilt. Others said it was from genuine understanding. Perhaps it was both. The king, the princess's father, lived longer than he deserved. He never understood why his daughter left, why she valued freedom over duty, why his enforcement of her promise had driven her away. He died believing he'd been right, that promises mattered more than consent. That honor mattered more than autonomy. His kingdom eventually fell to ruin, weakened by alliances never made, marriages never sealed. But the old woman's cottage remained. Others came after her, maintaining it as a sanctuary, a place where those running from forced situations could find shelter and learn to survive independently. The cottage became a symbol, a reminder that sometimes saying no matters more than keeping promises, that sometimes breaking expectations is the only way to preserve yourself, that sometimes the real transformation isn't about becoming someone else's ideal, but about becoming truly yourself. And in that cottage, above the fireplace, hung a painting. Not of the old woman, not of anyone, just a golden ball gleaming against a dark background. A reminder of where the story began, of the promise that should never have been enforced, of the violation that sparked a revolution of one, and beneath it, carved into the mantle, the same words from her grave. She chose herself. That's the true story of the Frog Prince, not a tale of transformation through love or acceptance, but a story about what happens when you refuse to be forced, when you choose autonomy over duty, when you value consent over promises extracted through desperation. The frog became a prince through the princess's rejection, not her acceptance. And the princess became herself through the courage to walk away from everything that demanded she be something else. Sometimes that's how real transformation works. Not through forcing yourself to accept what repulses you, but through the freedom to reject what violates you. And maybe that's the ending we need to tell more often. Not the one where the princess learns to love the monster, but the one where she learns to choose herself instead.